My name is Marcus Graham, aka djWHEAT, and I am a host, a producer, a net dev manager, a father, pretty much play every role that I possibly can in life. I guess a lot of people talk about the fact that we see the streaming numbers, specifically for StarCraft 2, going down, and we see a decline in a lot of the the events that are going on. A lot of the regular programming shows that used to get thousands upon thousands of views maybe get half that now, and I feel like I understand where people are coming from. I see that if you just looked at one particular channel and you just watched its numbers over time, that you might have seen a decline. However, I don't think it's as doom and gloom as some people think. And to me, it's really logical reason why this is happening. Imagine we used to, back in the day, have 3 channels on our television. And I bet you that a lot of people watched those 3 channels. Then what happened is more affiliates opened up. Suddenly there's 5 channels. Cable television hits the scene, and then suddenly there's 35 channels. You get satellite television, and then you have 1,000 channels. What happened was media saturation, and every single time another layer of channels or content or programming was added, it did take away from the overall audience that was originally watching, say, this network or this show, etc. Now, that's a problem with growth, and certainly some people suffer from that more than others. But again, this is natural when it comes to growth. The same thing happened in radio. Same thing happened with television. I'm sure the same thing happened in print. Once there was 1 newspaper and suddenly there were 50 newspapers. So this, honestly, in the culture of growth and saturation is nothing new. We're always going to have new content. We're always going to have new channels, new competitions that are going to be fighting for a lot of the same viewership that everyone else is fighting for. So with that being said, what do you do to grow that overall audience? And I don't know that anyone has the exact formula or an exact solution for actually making that happen. It's important that we see gamers just sort of, I guess you could say it's important to see gamers exposing themselves to content all around. I happen to be a StarCraft fan. I'm a fan of all sorts of other esports. I follow a lot of the content, and for me, my eyeballs jump around. For a lot of people, their eyeballs just kind of stay in one place. Maybe they just watch one channel or just watch one streamer, and that's the viewing habits of a lot of people. But I think that as more people get exposed to esports, to StarCraft 2, maybe they come in because they're watching Counter-Strike. And suddenly they're like, oh, well, what's this StarCraft 2 channel over here? What's this DayZ channel, or what's this Minecraft channel, or what's this guy playing Super Mario 64? Like, this is all crazy. And that's how new people are getting into this. So I like to combat this idea and thought of oversaturation with a fact that you can't argue with, and that is Twitch TV, since its inception, has never seen a month that hasn't seen growth. So from the month it was born, it's grown and grown and grown and grown, and never once has it become stagnant. Never once has it dropped. So while people are like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, what's going on? Like, we're losing viewers everywhere. What? This is insane. Actually, no. The viewers are all there. They're just exposing themselves to all sorts of different content. I think that things are much more spread out. Now, oversaturation is a big, big problem, but in this world, the best content will rise to the top and people will watch it, and the worst content will just sort of fall away. And that is something that we as a community, we as an audience, we sort of police whether we realize that or not. So a lot of people know that I come from an FPS background, and when it comes to competitive gaming, actually FPS isn't where I got my start. I think I can say pretty firmly that I started in fighting games. I played Tekken competitively, not necessarily on like a national level by any means, but on a local level, I was kicking people's asses. I also played a lot of Dance Dance Revolution, and at the same time, I was playing FPSs just because it was something that I loved. So you could say that through competition, I got into esports, through FPSs. That's where I got my player start, my commentary start. And it is a little sad to not see a really prominent FPS game in the spotlight right now. But when I think about 2002, one of the funny things is that StarCraft, while huge in Korea and still a big global following, it wasn't the bee's knees when it came to esports. It was Quake 3. It was Counter-Strike. It was Unreal Tournament. And it's kind of ironic and crazy to think that we've now had a complete flip-flop, and now RTS games, MOBA games, other strategy games are sort of leading the pack as far as esports is concerned. Now you think about, why is that? Why can't we just have another Quake? Why can't we just have, the next Counter-Strike be as prominent as it was? And, I think you have to look at a few things. The timing of everything. When Quake and Counter-Strike were at their peak, there wasn't really video broadcasting. We didn't have a way to watch our favorite players or to watch the competitions from the World Cyber Games events or the CPL events, not until the end of its lifespan. And because of that, two really phenomenal games missed out on a lot of the limelight. And I firmly believe that if we would have had some of these technologies when Quake 3 and when Counter-Strike were sort of at their peak, we would see a completely different landscape right now. And I'm not saying that like one would be more popular than the other, but I think they would share a stage. So as it stands, the current games that make really good esports happen to be strategy games. They happen to be StarCraft, which carried with it a massive, 13, 15-year legacy. It happens to be League of Legends that has been, and other MOBA games that are being played by millions of people around the world. And for those reasons, they automatically get the spotlight. So what can we do to bring an FPS into the spotlight? And as much as it pains me to say it, game developers, you gotta make a good fucking FPS. Like nothing has compared to Quake 3. Nothing has compared to Counter-Strike 1.6 in that time frame. And how do we fix that? The worst thing we can do is try to force FPS back into the limelight. Try to force this game to be popular. It's either going to be well received and picked up by the community, or it's not. Now, the other elephant in the room that we have to talk about is the fact that console gaming has done a lot to damage competitive FPS. And you're gonna be like, damage competitive FPS? What about Halo? What about Call of Duty? People don't realize this, but consoles single-handedly segregated the community in a way that has never happened before. You are either a 360 player, a PS3 player, or a PC player. But none of these communities want to recognize that the other is there, respect the other, or even compete with one another. So how do you segregate one community? Who is the best? The only way that you're truly going to be able to find something out like that is if you have a unification of platforms. Well, in 100 years, we're probably not going to see something like that. So console gaming separates the players unless one title is specific to an IP. Take, for example, Halo and 360, you're always going to have this problem. And that's why PC gaming, I think, rose to the top quickly in that time frame, because everyone was just sort of on the same platform. Will that ever be fixed? I don't know. But for me, that has played a crucial role in why FPSs have not been as dominant. What is popular has mostly existed on the consoles, and that unfortunately has not made a transition in the way that other esports games did. one of the biggest problems with the growth of esports, especially if you look at like the year 2000 to 2007, is that frankly it was such an obscure and unique thing that there weren't a whole lot of people that were out there talking about it or trying to bring new people into it. And frankly, I don't think we need to do much differently in our esports lives as fans, as casters, as players, as community, to make this activity more acceptable. I mean, I don't think we would have gotten as far as we have gotten if it wasn't already acceptable on many levels. So to me, it's more about exposure, because if more people know about it, and it becomes just generally more accepted in that regard. I guess it seems like a simple concept, but I feel like seeing these articles in Forbes, seeing esports being on the front page of USA Today, that kind of thing is what we need the most of. So that when I talk to someone and they're like, what do you do, djWHEAT? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm involved in competitive gaming. I do, talk shows and commentate events. They're not looking at me like, oh, what? They're like, oh, hey, you know what? I read about that the other day. Or I've got a brother that's into that. Or, yeah, my son plays or my daughter plays. It's that sort of exposure. And that sort of acceptance, I think, is the mainstream grab that we need. It's not necessarily going to bring more money into esports. It's not necessarily going to, turn our players into bigger celebrities than they already are. But what it will do is will make it more generally accepted. It will mean that maybe when that kid asks his parents, "Hey, I want to go to MLG and I want to see this event live," that it's not going to be such a crazy thing to think that their kid just asked them to go watch a video game competition. So I think that exposure to more people, like understanding and explanation of what it is. And I'm not suggesting that we teach people how to play these games, but just like, hey, yeah, this is becoming a bigger thing. This is kind of normal. These guys compete at a super high level in a global scale in video games, just like people compete in spelling bees and cup stacking and other crazy log throwing type activities that we see all the time. Like, I can name 10 other things that are weirder than video games being played for money. Now, one of the big, I guess, pushbacks from a lot of people in esports and in various communities is the concept of, well, what happens when it becomes too mainstream? And, all these people, all these companies want to come in and they see it as a money grab and they just want to, they want to run it their way and do it this way. And I understand their concerns. But at some point, we have to make a decision. We have to make a decision and collectively say, we want this to grow. We want this to get bigger. We want this to be a source of jobs, to be a source of entertainment, to be a source of competition. And because of that, we are going to have to make some sacrifices. That might mean that, on your shows, you're cursing less, or on your stream, you're not necessarily saying everything that you want to say, or that you're conducting yourself like a normal human being does when you're, at an event or at a tournament. I mean, who cares? Like, when you get a job in this world, guess what? You don't walk into, oh, hey, Bob, what's up? Hey, you're my boss. It doesn't happen. You get a job in life and you're expected to act a certain way. You're expected to, do what your boss tells you. And like that whole change in one's life, to many, it's like a shocking thing, but guess what? That's life. It's the same kind of thing to me. The fighting game community has come out and been the most vocal about this, is that they feel like it would take away from the heart of what the fighting game community is and how it's grown. And, I don't believe it. I don't believe it for one bit. I think that these guys can continue to do what they want to do. I think they can continue to run the events that they want to run. I think that they can keep what has made them the fighting game community, but still take the support from people who want to give it. If a company wants to come in and throw some money to improve a tournament or to throw more prize money in, how is that a bad thing? I just think that sometimes it's tough to give up the past. Like, do I wish that Quake 3 was back on the circuit and it was the best game and 50 billion people watched it? Yeah, I do. But I'm also realistic and realize, hey, times have changed, things have changed. If I would have said, I'm going to dedicate myself to Quake 3 and nothing else, I would not be sitting here answering these questions today. Esports is right now in sort of this interesting time because it's the biggest it's ever been. I mean, no one will ever argue that. Like 2012 has been massive in terms of stream numbers, people watching it, the number of articles that have been posted about this and standard publications, the amount of times that we've seen it on the news or it's been mentioned somewhere. I mean, esports has grown, it's huge. And with that, we get a lot of new people coming in. They're learning about, the past few years of history, and some of them are learning a little bit more about, what happened in the early days of esports, and what sort of some of the ups and downs that we've seen. And it is kind of funny because we do see a lot of similarities between different years, between different games. Between the arguments of that people make about my community or my game is better than your community and your game. Let's just go through a few examples of some of the similarities that we've seen. World of Warcraft at one point was an esport. It was. Might surprise you, but believe it or not, 3 guys used to hop into an arena. They used to battle it out 3v3. The metagame was pretty... And it changed, but for the most part, it was pretty standard, and it wasn't amazing. As someone who has been esports, I couldn't ever watch it and truly get excited about what I was seeing. I could appreciate the competition because anything at that high level is tough, but for me, it just didn't really trip my trigger. And, I was one of those guys that made that argument, like, this isn't really an esport. You know what it is? It's a game that a lot of people play, and so a lot of people want to watch it, and great. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. If the djWHEAT of today had taken a look at that game, I would have said the same thing. But then I would have added this stipulation, like, you know what? At least they're making the effort, or at least they're providing a vehicle for competition for these players. It's now more than a monthly subscription MMO. It's something that people can compete in. So I feel like a lot of the MOBA games get this same sort of treatment. Han, it's not really an esport. League of Legends, it's not an esport. Dota 2, much more forgiving, but it feel like it's some of these same things. Is that like people are saying, oh, well, it's just got a crap load of people that play the game, and that's why so many people watch it. And there's truth to that, but at the same time, it's like, at least they're making an effort. So we see that happening a lot, and I feel like we'll continue to see that for years as, other companies try to push support into gaming. But we've also seen the sort of lulls in esports. Between 2003 and 2004, there was a lull. Between 2006 and 2009, there was a fairly big lull. And that's where things really started to pick up. So are we going to see another dip in competitive gaming in the near future? I don't know, but the trend has been there in the past. I feel like because of video streaming and because that has become such a huge part of the culture of gaming and specifically competitive gaming, I don't see that dip happening. I think the dip could be a little less substantial, but for the most part, I don't see history repeating itself there. The thing that gets me the most about some of the things that happen in esports today is, quite frankly, the fact that people, businesses, managers, players, they all make the same mistakes. And why are we making the same mistakes when really esports is 12, 13 years old? Not that everyone can be privy to every decision and every success and every failure that's ever happened in esports, but there's a lot of things that we can look back on historically and go, you know what, they tried that? That didn't work too well. Let's kind of stay away from that. And I'm not suggesting people don't innovate and take bad ideas and try to change them and make them better, but when you make the exact same mistake that another company or person or player or team made 4 years ago, I feel like there's no excuse for that. And so I think that that's something that is changing as more and more people go, you know what, it does behoove us to look at what has happened in competitive gaming and make some decisions based off of successes and failures that we've seen in the past. Oh, I hate this question because I just think it's stupid. But I understand why people might ask it. So basically, it's just, this is like kind of like a mind-blowing thing, right? Esports is certainly becoming more corporate. There's, like new companies come in, they sponsor this company, this team is now selling t-shirts, like that's corporate. And, the community is as strong as it's ever been. When I was playing Quake 3 and I was managing the 519 Quake 3 team, there was nothing corporate about esports. And the community survived. It was there, and it was there because the community loved the game. And the community liked to be with other people who like to play the game and who like to follow their favorite players and who like to, just have that sense of unity. That community is never going away. If someone would have handed me $5 million or $50 or food stamps or a monitor or a mouse, it didn't matter. Because the community was founded on the love of the game, and that's why these people come together. Corporate coming in or corporate leaving will never really change a community, because that's the one thing that these corporate guys can't touch. And that's how you should look at community. Because, the biggest company, Johnny McDollarbucks, could come in and shower his money on StarCraft 2 and start giving away $50 billion. And that's not going to stop the collective community from talking about that, from saying, well, I think Johnny McDollarbucks sucks for putting this much in. Well, I think it's a great thing. That argument's always going to be there. You're never going to be able to take away the love-hate relationship that fans have with their players. Look at sports. Billion-dollar history. Guess what? The fans are the community. So I don't get how people can ask or even think about the community leaving or the community escaping or the organic or grassroots feel leaving that's and a whole of something that's special. I just can't imagine it, because look at these examples around us. Sports, the fact that esports has already grown and the community's only gotten bigger as more and more corporate individuals, corporate sponsorships have come into play. I just think that it's a totally ridiculous thing to think the community would ever not benefit or be affected in such a major or detrimental way by money or corporate sponsorship or exposure coming into the picture. I think esports has already been a career of mine. In fact, I like to think that I've had 3 or 4 careers so far, with 1 or 2 of them having major focus. I mean, I worked in corporate IT for about 10 years. It was something that I really enjoyed doing, and I guarantee you, if I was not an esports commentator or working with Twitch, that I would still be doing something in the information technology field. It was just something I enjoyed doing. I love troubleshooting. It's like one of my favorite things to do in the entire world. But I would say that I have been working a career in esports since 1997. When I was competing, I took that seriously. I was losing money for sure, but I took it seriously. Like I wasn't necessarily going, I'm going to play Quake 3 one day. That's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my job. I wasn't thinking about it, but I was just like, I love doing this so much. Like I want to do it. So whether I realized I was working a career or not, I was sort of paving a path for myself that eventually I would go like, oh, hey, I didn't realize it, but I've been putting these bricks down and there's a road here and I'm going to start walking on it. So, I have I have shifted before and not made esports my focus by, of course, when, say, the Championship Gaming Series in 2009 closed its doors. I went to work back, or I went back to work in information technology, but still, that's when I started Live on 3. That's when I started doing my, some of my other shows. That's when I brought back Epileptic Gaming. So at that point, I was like, I'm still going to stay in. Like, I want this career, these opportunities to continue to exist, and quite frankly, I just love doing it. So, I kind of feel like I cannot imagine a life without esports as a part of that career. That could mean as a commentator, that could mean as a host, that could even mean just working full time for Twitch or one more game. Like, I don't really care what my role is. I just feel like I worked so hard to get myself here and to try to pave the way for other people and other personalities and other casters, that I want to continue to be a part of that. I want to continue to be a part of that growth. I want to lend my experiences to it. So, I guess I see esports as a lifetime career, whether it's in the spotlight and my absolute focus, or whether it's still something that, I'm doing on the side as much as I possibly can. Well, it's not easy. I mean, like the worst thought that you could have ever is like, oh man, I would be like, this would be so easy if I was just single. If I didn't have a wife and kid, man, I'll travel around all day. I'll stay up till 6 a.m. and then get back up at 10 a.m. and like that's the lifestyle I'd live. And I did live that lifestyle. But it's rewarding to be able to say, hey, I work in esports and I get to feed my family because of it. I get to put a house over their head, and I get to come home to them from trips, and I get to go to my wife for support. Like, that's great in a pretty critical world of the internet and esports. It's great to have someone I can confide in all the time, and that's what Jen, my wife, is to me. And as far as like cultivating my own little gaming group of misfits, that's what Mini-Wheat is to me. He lets me unwind. He reminds me that no matter how drama-filled some of esports can be and how like stressful it can be, that gaming is about fun and about the experiences that you can have with with friends or family in that regard. So would I be able to do so much more? And would I be able to produce more content and do more shows and travel and go to more events and cast more events if I was single? Of course. Would it be as rewarding? For me, I don't think so. And so that's a sacrifice that's worth it to me. Sure, when I can't go to this event because, gosh, I've been gone for 2 weeks and I want to stay at home and and be with my family. It's like, yeah, that kind of sucks that I can't go to that next DreamHack or whatever. But when you have a wife and you have a son or you have a daughter and you've got a family, like, you'll understand. It's just that kind of shit changes you. So it doesn't bother me at all. The internet's a very mysterious and interesting place, and of course, a lot of the personalities, the players in StarCraft 2 and other esports, they get a lot of criticism, a lot of hate. The hate's usually the loudest, and people ask me quite often, how do you deal with it? There's for me personally, it's something that's been around since the beginning of time. Like, I used to hang out on BBSs, bulletin board systems. I used to call them up with my modem. And I used to go on there and talk shit to people. Like, I used to, man, your post sucked. And that to me, like, that was the early forms of the internet. So it's just something that's always been around. And so I guess that, like, the path that I have taken myself, it has set me up to never really think about that kind of stuff. I mean, I believe that anyone who's like, internet negativity doesn't affect me one bit because I'm Superman, I don't believe that shit. You can read some really nasty, disturbing, just like disrespectful and horrible stuff that people will write. And it will affect you. But you just have to separate yourself and realize that, you know, this is just a person typing words on the internet. And I often just think about the people that I know in this industry, the friends that are around me, my family, and you ask yourself the simple question: if what that guy is saying is true, would I be where I'm at? Would I, consistently keep doing shows that people would continue to watch? Or, would I have the friends that I have? It's just like people want to paint you into the picture of being like the worst person in the world. And frankly, a lot of that you just have to kind of brush off. But you do have to be careful, because I've read some things that I've thought about. I've lost sleep over. I've been like, man, maybe I did come off as a giant dick to this guest or this, and so I would never say that you can't listen to everything on the internet, because I think it is important to grab some of the good criticism that you get. Only one guy might say something, but as someone who's constantly trying to self-improve, who's someone who does genuinely care what the community thinks about, the content I create, or maybe some of the things I do, or the direction that I would like to go, I want to listen to the community. But you will have to filter out a lot of the negative bullshit that comes with it. At the end of the day, don't Google your name. They tell that to reality TV people all the time, because people are going to be like, God, I hate this girl. She's got big lips, and I hate the way she talks, and blah, blah, blah. That'll damage someone who's not used to it. But, frankly, just take it with a grain of salt, and never let it weigh you down too much. When we talk a lot about esports and we look at our current pool of players, one of the things that we always think about is, what do a lot of these players do after they're done playing? Or do they leave esports? They continue to stay in gaming? And with the amount of video content that's being produced and the amount of tournaments that they're at, one of the popular trends that we're seeing is more players getting involved in the production, in the broadcast, and commentating, being an analyst. And I think this is a really phenomenal thing. I mean, more than anything, this follows a lot of the real life examples that we've seen in sports. Some of the great quarterbacks all of a sudden now on this 4-person panel along with some other analysts and maybe a former coach and someone who's just been involved in sports journalism for a long time. And I find that they bring an element to the table that a lot of times cannot be achieved by just being, say, a trained broadcast professional. However, it's hard to say this person would be good, or you put a microphone in that player's mouth and they're going to be the best commentator ever, or this guy's a trained broadcaster, so that means he's automatically going to be a great caster. There is no formula right now for what makes a good team, what makes a good broadcast panel. It's kind of like actors. You've got trained actors, and then you've got these people who are just like, hey, I would like to try that. I will go to an audition. Oh, look at me. I just got paid $4 million to star in a movie. That kind of shit happens all the time. The thing is that there are absolutely some people that belong in front of a camera and are able to speak their mind really well and can flow with other individuals and can create excitement and also can relate their personal playing experiences to what's happening in the game. But those people are few and far between. And I think that you can't necessarily just take any player, even though they have, statistically a better mind than most of the people that are, say, commentating or getting on the desk today, because they might not be able to convey their words in a way that is going to satisfy production, the audience. Think about specifically in StarCraft 2, think about the Home Story Cup and what a unique event this is, because it allows all of these pros to sort of commentate, give their thoughts on the game. It's a unique and different perspective. However, I would not want to watch the Home Story Cup week after week after week after week, because I personally need the sports side of it, the building the story throughout, the building the excitement, the focusing on specific matchups, players, and telling the story that has been happened. Like, for me, that's what I see as more traditionally the move from, or rather the correlation between regular sports and esports. So, you know, I welcome more and more ex-pros into the scene, because I think it's a great way to transition. And I think that many of them, if they want to go that route, should consider practicing, whether that means make a video blog or start making more content with your team. Like, the more comfortable you can get in that sort of environment and with a camera and commentating or doing shows, the better off you're going to be able to translate your knowledge and your passion to, you know, the commentator's desk or the sideline reporting, or maybe just being a journalist overall. So I'd love to see more of it, because I think that it would benefit esports as a whole to be able to share that information with the audience and the community more often. I've decided that I no longer have any idea how to advise people how to get into the esports scene. I would gladly tell you how I got into the esports scene and suggest that maybe if you replicate it, that it would, you know, indeed help you to get into the esports scene. I worked an 8-to-5 job. I came home from said 8-to-5 job, I hopped on a microphone, and pretty much for 7 days a week, I commentated about 3 hours a night. I'd go out, I'd find leagues that didn't have anyone commentating, which at that point was no one. And I said, hey, I'm going to commentate this game tonight, and I'll be doing this one tomorrow and this one tomorrow. Sometimes it would be to 25 people, sometimes it'd be to 200 people, and on the odd and rare occasion, maybe it'd be to 1,000 people. But I did this for a long time. I did this for almost 3 years. And then, of course, I started going and doing more shows. I started, obviously, during this time, participating a lot in the community, trying to get people to tune in or participate in discussions. And, you know, I guess here I am. Like, I don't know. I just feel like if you really, really want it, and you don't want a job in esports or a position in esports just because it's a position in esports, but if you really, really want it, I was raised to just go get it. And I feel like more people just need to do that. Just go get it. I will relate a very recent story that this is the case. I still practice this. I was at PAX. Riot had the League of Legends NA regionals there, and I watched the opening of the show, and Rachel Seltzer Please came out. She came out with a guy that I didn't really know who this guy was, but I sat there and I watched it and I said, I think I can do a better job. I'm going to go get that job. And I went over and I talked to them and I said, look, I think that I can benefit you guys. I think I can bring some experience. I think I can bring some, you know, some esports history to this. And I'd like to be considered for your host at the finals. And they talked about it. It was a back and forth. A lot of guys thought, well, he is pretty prominent in StarCraft. It might be a little weird. And I made a case for myself, said, hey, I've been working in esports for a long time. Like, give it a shot. And they gave it to me. I wanted it. I just went for it. Just go do the same thing. Just fucking do it. It will get you far. It will get you places. And that's really the best advice I can give.